Warning, the video you're about to see for YouTube is disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hey there, I see you are into the world of surreal and weird games. I'm happy to inform you come to the right place. Just a heads up though, this video touches on some mature themes, so consider yourself warned. We got games from all over the internet here, ranging from simple hidden Steam games to those hidden away on strange forgotten dead websites. It's gonna be a wild and fun ride, I promise. I'm sure you already knew how the Iceberg chart video works, so I won't bother you with the details. So I will give you an explanation of what each game is about and why it's on the list. This Iceberg chart is massive, with over 400 entries. Since there is so much to cover, I'll be splitting this chart into few videos to give each game a bit more attention. Oh, and by the way, I have another Iceberg chart on my channel that's all about disturbing and obscure games. But I also have many other different icebergs about cryptids, mythological beings, obscure myths and legends in cartoons, and about Easter eggs and glitches in games. Feel free to check them out if you're curious, but before we dive in, I want to say a big thank you for tuning in and watching this video. Enjoy!
Layer 1.
Yummi Nikki. We are going to start layer 1 with a game called Yummi Nikki. It's a game made in the RPG Maker, like some other games found in this list, but this isn't a bad thing at all. The game has no clear objection or narrative, and the player is free to explore and interact with the various dreamscapes that Madasuki experience. These dreamscapes are often bizarre and unsettling and features various characters and environments that are open to interpretation, and that is one more unique thing about this game. The fact that the game leaves you alone with your thoughts really helps to suck the player into the world, and how the visuals blend with the music connects with you even more. The story is based on visual storytelling, and the game is free on Steam, and it's a great way to start this list.
Popular RPG horror games.
This entry is about a huge list of games that are made in the RPG Maker. This is a rabbit hole to dive in if you want, because you will see many bad games, but also many creative minds who put some great games together. Like I said, one of the first games on the list was made in the RPG Maker. The most popular you need to try out if you want to dive into horror games, and you probably are definitely Corpse Party, because of course, Omori, and definitely check out Dreaming Mary if you didn't.
LS Dream Emulator.
So this entry has every right to be on the list. At this point, if you're into weird and obscure games, there is no chance you missed this. And if you didn't, let me explain you the Dream Simulator. To understand the game a bit more, we need to talk about the creator Osamu Sato. Now, what is special about him? He rejected the idea of games and gaming in general. He was a guy who wanted to create art, mostly based on photography, but he got interested into 3D technology. Osamu Sato said, "In life, there isn't any clear objective on what to do, and the game follows the same way, with just sheer randomness," which was put together with the help of the Dream Diary by Asmik Ace, an employee of the studio. To talk about the gameplay, I mean, are you seeing the gameplay? Can you explain it? Well, if no, I need to tell you that my answer is also no. You need to think about Dream Simulator more as an experience as a game, which isn't a bad thing at all.
WarioWare.
Well, WarioWare isn't the most unknown game for sure, but its wacky style helps it to be on the list. The game is basically a collection of minigames where you play as Wario and his friends. The game shows you bizarre quick reaction games where you need to quickly find a way to win. And that's the whole gimmick about the game. If you didn't try this series already, I would definitely recommend it because it's very fun in short bursts.
Omori.
Omori is a game that I talked about on my other list, which I mentioned in the beginning. It's a game that lets you dive into a dark world where friendship is important. Even the game is a homage to Earthbound. but it's much more mature oriented. The simple fact that the only way for Mori to wake up from the dream world is to stab himself with a knife tells you something about the game. And it's a game like Yummi Nikki, where you play in the real world when you awake, but also in a dark world in your dreams. Even if the game has a cute art style, it deals with heavy stuff. I like the scene where you attack one girl who attacked your friend with the same knife you used to wake up, but this time it was not a dream. Earthbound. Earthbound is beaten to death with reviews until this point. Don't get me wrong, it's definitely a revolutionary game for its time, as it put a twist on classic Dungeons & Dragons formula RPG style of games. It has inspired so many games over the years, and it's a Japanese RPG with American-like settings, which was also new for the time. The game didn't take itself too seriously. It revolves around a kid who needs to save the future from an evil race. Well, this is an oversimplification of the plot, obviously. Plus there is a weird conspiracy theory floating around about the end of the game and its representations, which I already talked about in my other Iceberg chart. Desert Bus. Desert Bus is a quite interesting game for what it is. Okay, I'm completely lying, but the backstory is quite interesting. So it's supposed to be a part of the Penn & Teller Smoke and Mirrors game, which was released on the Sega CD in 1995. Penn & Teller was a popular TV show where magicians would come to the show and try to fool Penn & Teller. But back to the game. The objective of the game is simple. It is to drive a bus from Tucson, Arizona to Las Vegas, Nevada. But there is a catch. You need to drive it in real time, because the maximum speed of the bus is 45 miles per hour or 72 kilometers per hour. To complete the game, you need to play it for 8 hours straight, and the best thing is there is no interaction whatsoever. This is the ultimate test of patience, which I don't recommend at all. Undertale. Undertale is a classic game at this point, and it's hard to imagine you didn't hear somewhere about it. The game has a unique thing where you can choose whatever you will, fight with your opponent or leave them alone. This affects the whole game around you and how the story will proceed. It is easily seen how it draws inspiration from Earthbound, but it doesn't try to hide it but embrace it. It loves to play with your morals and how you act with the world around you. With its quirky art style, it is a game worth being on the list. Jazzpunk. Jazzpunk is a 2-hour single-player game that allows the player to interact with the world in any order they like. What makes this game surreal is how the game feels and looks. I mean, the fact you are shipped in a human-shaped box into a spy agency where you talk to a guy who gives you certain pills so you can start your first mission is already kind of weird. You will need to collect organs, steal pigeons, fight zombies made of pepperoni in a pizza world. Simply to put it, you will never know what you will encounter next in this game. Katamari Damacy. Katamari Damacy is a game that I discovered very late in my life. Sadly, I didn't grow up with the PlayStation 2 release, but I got it on my PlayStation Vita. Why is Katamari on the list? Well, it's simple. The weird and funny Japanese humor is one thing, but the fact you're a small guy who keeps his ball rolling and devouring other objects into his ball to make it more bigger is more fun than it sounds. Trust me. The point of the game is simple. You need to swallow so many objects around you until you become a star. Again, oversimplification of the plot for the sake of the video. Silent Hill series. Silent Hill games are an obvious pick for this list. There is so much talk about this series here. There are games that love to play psychological games with you, love to portray the mental state of the player in various creatures you will meet on the way, often bleeding the real world with the other dimensions, leaves the player completely clueless about what is going on. Silent Hill knew what it was, and it's sad to see we didn't see a new game in the franchise for a long time. I played Silent Hill Room for a review video on my channel a few years ago, where we were still locked up because of the pandemic going on, and it just hit home so hard I can't even explain it, even being the worst Silent Hill game in the series. And also a thing I like to mention about Silent Hill is how they use dentist tool in the soundtrack to make the sounds even more obscure. I hope this description of the game will satisfy you.
Harvester.
Harvester is a classic point-and-click game from the 90s. It's obvious why it's landed on the list. As the game starts, you wake up in a small town called Harvester. You are a 18 years old lad and you lost your memory and need to find out what the heck is going on. Easier said than done. The setting is in the 1950s and you know your name is Steve and you have always been a kidder. After you visit the butcher, the game gets a bit darker and everything feels somewhat weird and out of place. But before you realize it, the game just goes overboard. The game loves to tell you about the role of violence in society. Sex is also taboo in the game, not because it's bad, but mostly because the women in the game will usually hurt their male partners so hard they throw them into hospital beds afterward. Also, the scene where the zombie kids eat their mother is just again a sheer randomness of the game. It is a game that tries to visualize a theme of violence in popular media. It is a game that gets crazier by the minute when it goes off, with a satisfying end to it.
Zeno Clash.
Zeno Clash is a sort of a fighting game in a FPS, released in 2009 on Steam. It's essentially like a first-person virtual fight club game. And please remake this game for VR because it looks kind of fun. So it's a game where the whole action revolves around first-person brawling and timing your punches, landing kicks and dodging. And the game is based on the same engine as the Dark Messiahs of Might and Magic. The story is quite complicated to explain, but in few short sentences, you are a young man named Ged who seeks revenge because his family was killed by a tall creature that spawns humans and animal-like human children. Another fun fact of the game is that the development started in the 1990s.
Puppet Combo Games.
Puppet Combo Games isn't a game but a studio that makes obscure games you wanna check out. The games are unsettling and disturbing. A way to describe them would be they are like PlayStation 1/PlayStation 2 games with a 80s VHS style overlay to them. They are a low tribute to the 80s. Many of the games were inspired by old slasher movies. One bizarre mention is the Christmas Massacre, where you play as Blood Mania and go on a killing spree with a knife. There is even a point in the game where you go to a school, but thanks to God you didn't have a knife at that point, but a goddamn flamethrower instead. Yep, pushing some buttons right there. Well, they have a bunch of games like this, so you can check them out if you want to, and I know I sure will.
Post-Void.
Post-Void is best described if Hotline Miami and Doom had a love child, minus the awesome soundtrack from both games, at least at first glance. The game is a quick FPS where every shot needs to count, because if you don't kill enough enemies your time will run up and you will die. So you need to kill to survive. It has a vivid color palette and a hectic soundtrack. And my opinion is that the game is best at short gaming sessions, because if you play this game more than a half an hour you probably get a headache.
American McGee's Alice.
American McGee's Alice is a quite unique game. It has a distinct art style and its story is great, giving you small pieces at a time as you try to connect the dots of what actually is happening. It's a quite morbid game, as right at the beginning of the game your parents die. The level design is great, but it has some roughness around the edges and you need to do some research for yourself to get a better experience. I mean, Alice in Wonderland is a pretty amazing story and this game has a dark twist on it. I mean, can it get any better? But you need to be warned because there are some control issues you need to face if you want to jump back to play this game. Just a small heads up.
Honk Kong 97.
Honk Kong 97 is an unlicensed game from the Famicom from the year 1995, developed by Hepsoft. There is apparently also some hard copies of the game, where there are like 30 games floating around somewhere, and the chance you will see one of them or get is 0 to none, if they even exist. So there is only one way to play this game, and you probably knew which way. What I need to mention is also that the game dropped the F-bomb in the intro. Imagine that in a game from 1994 and for the Super Famicom. It's a parody where Jackie Chan, the cousin of Bruce Lee, wipes out 1.2 million communists. Yeah, the gameplay is also pretty basic as you expected, and apparently the game was made in 2 days. One thing I wanna mention also about Honk Kong 97 is the infamous death screen at the end of the game. It sparked a whole investigation around the world about the corpse we see at the end screen. Some have theorized maybe it belonged to a kickboxer from Poland, but some speculate that the corpse belonged to a man from the Bosnian War which was recorded at the time. And this is a pretty disturbing rabbit hole to dive in if you dare. Deadly Premonition. Deadly Premonition is written off as a rip-off of Silent Hill. Some gamers claim this is the best game ever, and some say that it's the worst game ever. It can be easily written off as cheesy, but hey, any game which gives you money for shaving beard is a good game, I guess. It's like a B-movie in a game. It's simple, if you love Resi, Silent Hill and the Clock Tower, you will probably enjoy this game. The story follows the agent Francis York Morgan, which is a FBI investigator who gets involved in a case of murder of young girls. He also got a split personality called Zack, with which he talks frequently and openly in front of other people. Plus, of course, the game has many bizarre monsters you need to fight. Pony Island. Of course, Pony Island needs to be on this list. In this game you will play as a hard-working programmer, but also as a cute little pony. It seems like you're playing an arcade game, but you get sucked into one. The game loves to play with the fourth wall, and as you play along you will discover the sinister meaning behind the game. It has some cult vibes going on, but I don't want to spoil too much because this game, even if it's a little bit forgotten, it's quite interesting and fun. Stanley Parable. Stanley Parable can be described as an open-ended walking simulator with multiple endings waiting for you, but it's more than that. It's a game based on a popular Half-Life engine which goes under the name the Source Engine. It is a game made with love and it's well thought out. The game takes you control of Stanley, an office worker. It is a game that can be beaten in 5 minutes if you follow the protocol which are given to you, or you go to the other route and see what awaits you. The game director stated that the games are just set of decisions you make, and this game is just based on that. Binding of Isaac. Binding of Isaac confronts you with some depressive stuff. It paints you a picture of you being in a lovely family, but then suddenly your parents are getting divorced and you're left alone with your mother. As time passes by, you saw that your mother is acting strange. One day after your mother watches the religious channel, a voice speaks to her and it said she needs to purify you, taking away everything in your possession. To top it all off, even your clothes, and you're left naked. The second time the voice speaks to her, telling her there is only one true way to purify you, and that's by killing you. Your mother goes to the kitchen and takes a knife and starts pursuing you around the house. Then you crawl into a small chest in your room, and that's where many different theories start to pop up of what actually happened. The creator of this game also suffered abuse as a child, and this is a way how he channeled his thoughts into making this game. It is a game that addresses abuse and religious content, and it's definitely a game you need to try out if you didn't play it. Pikmin. Why Pikmin is on the list is a good question, but it's unfair to skip it, so let's talk about it. Pikmin is made by the man himself, Shigeru Miyamoto, and the game has 5 sequels. Pikmin isn't a horror game, but rather a real-time strategy game, sort of. Sadly I didn't play Pikmin, but it reminded me of a similar game this time, which is called Overlord, found on PC and Xbox 360. The basic premise of Pikmin, like in Overlord, is that you have different types of Pikmins, so you can use them to perform different tasks for you, so you can finish the mission and move on. Tomodachi Life. Tomodachi Life is a social simulation video game developed by Nintendo that I didn't experience at all. It was released on the Nintendo 3DS. The game takes advantage of the Mii's, in which you can create your custom character and interact with other characters online. Again, maybe like Pikmin, it is not the best pick for the list, but sure, I'm up for everything. But if I would take a wild guess why this game is on the list, it's probably because you can create and do some wacky stuff with the game. Noby Noby Boy. Noby Noby Boy is a PlayStation 3 game, which was created by the Katamari creator Kaita Takashi. This game was made as an exclusive title for the PlayStation Network. Nobi actually means stretch in Japanese, but as far as I understand it can also mean carefree. The game features the distinct art style of Katamari, which is expected. It has some weird control settings. It's definitely a weird game, but it wasn't praised so much as Katamari, mostly because of the control scheme. There isn't much to talk about here, so let's jump to the entry number 25. Deltarune. The entry 25 on our list is the game called Deltarune. It is the game behind the studio from Undertale, and it follows a similar fashion. The world of Deltarune is like the world of Undertale, a pretty weird world. And it's supposed to be the parallel world to Undertale. It's definitely sticking to the same art style, which isn't a bad thing at all. You will see various interesting looking characters on your adventure. The game is pretty unpredictable and will confuse you from time to time. But the game also has its dark side. Simply to put, if you love Undertale, this is the next step. Golden Light. Golden Light is messed up, and the best explanation of the game is that you are diving into an obscure meat world. The intro starts that you are with your girlfriend called She, and after you wanna pick up a rose as a present for her, she got sucked into a huge hole-like meat thing looking like a, well, yes. As you walk into the gut, and that's how the first level is called, you will slowly start to realize that everything around you is made from meat. The story will also slowly reveal the relationship with She. While you enjoy the cutscenes and the story part, you will also have other things to do, and that is to kill a whole bunch of weird looking creatures. However, this game is pretty decent as I saw. And it's a pretty good game if you wanna dive deeper. There are weapons, upgrades and all that good stuff. Lisa series. Lisa's series has 3 games in the main entry, and I already talked about one of them, and that's the Lisa Painful. It's a post-apocalyptic game per se, where in a weird flash all the women in the world disappear. This led that all men who were left alone would turn to violent behavior. They found a substance that if they overdose on it, would turn them into horrific creatures. But your character suddenly finds in the middle of nowhere a little girl. Because he's afraid of what would happen to the girl if the other sees them, he gives her shelter and protects her despite he is also suffering from the substance addiction. But sadly she was taken away from him and he would do everything he can to get her back. The game is also pretty sad but also disturbing in some parts. Facade. Facade is a weird looking and forgotten game from 2005. It's an AI text-based game. The game has a weird settings where you're set in an apartment with a couple. Well, okay, that's not the weird thing, but what is how the weird couple is looking at you the whole time and waiting for you to start writing something so you can interact with them. Think about the game as a beta ChatGPT game with a predetermined path. It was a free game and still is, and you can download it if you feel lonely and you got bored with ChatGPT. Superliminal. If you wanna blow your mind, but in a good way, it's a puzzle game which plays with reality. You're a patient which participates in a dream therapy program. And I don't wanna even start how dreams sometimes make no sense. Well, this game doesn't go overboard with this idea, but still. The gameplay is based around perception of objects and how you can interact with them. Gamers who play Portal and Stanley Parable will connect the dots fast and see how this game was inspired by it. Some objects, if you throw them at your feet, will become smaller so you can use them in a way to progress the level, and vice versa. It's a short and interesting game. Rainbow. Rainbow is a pretty interesting game. The name of the title is also the name of your female protagonist, which is a young girl. At the beginning of the game, it takes immediately a dark twist as the girl discovers her parents were sliced up into tiny pieces by a cult. Because of that, she ends up in a mental institution, because of obvious reasons. After she's been hospitalized, she has only one wish, and that's to go back to her granny and be at peace and to recover from the terrible things she witnesses. But easier said than done. because the doctor simply disagrees with her and the only way he thinks she can heal is to take pills. Because friend is suffering from depression and she nervous. After taking the pills, the world takes an even weirder and darker twist. The game won't tell you if the things the young girl witnesses are the side effects of the pills or actually how she sees the world because of her illness. The only way to find the truth is to talk to demons, like always, because talking to them will reveal the truth. But beware, because the same demon will tell you that you need to end it all to be finally happy.
Antichamber.
Now, Antichamber is a game that demands something from you that I don't have much, and that's patience. It's a puzzle game about logic and an open mind and your love for experimentation. Also, you're dropped into the game without a tutorial, so you need to figure out stuff for yourself. Antichamber doesn't waste time before presenting you with mind-boggling puzzles. So if this sounds fun to you, hey, you found a game for a good pastime. The game has really charm, and it feels rewarding after you solve the puzzles. But this isn't everybody's cup of tea. The strategic use of visuals in Antichamber encourages exploration and guides the player through the mind-bending puzzles. Despite the game is predominantly black and white in aesthetics, the game clearly employs bursts of color to provide hints and tips on how to progress. Why is it on the list? Well, are you looking at the gameplay? Does it need more explanation? It's a trippy game with good puzzles and good soundtrack.
Limbo.
Limbo is a master of its art and knows how to use visuals and sounds to present us a story without words. In Limbo, you're playing as a small young boy. The game is pretty dark in tone and definitely deserves a spotlight on this list. Throughout the eyes of a kid, the whole world looks different, and that's one of the things Limbo is trying to show us. You need to watch every step you take because there are many scary and disturbing things awaiting you that will rip you to shreds and torn you apart if you're not careful. There are also many crazy theories about the small worms that can be found in Limbo and how the game Limbo is connected with the game Inside, but I leave that for another video.
The Silver Case.
This game is a Japanese visual novel made for the PlayStation 1 in 1999 and later ported to PC. The story is based off a group of nihilistic detectives called the Heinous Crime Unit, which need to solve murder runs and many other criminal activities happening around the town. The crazy part is they are somehow affecting other people. You see, all the crazy stuff which are unfolding around the town are starting to become contagious. The game is also philosophical. It also tries to raise questions about how technology changes social interaction and how easy it is to leak informations, which are scary things in my opinion. The game also loves to shift gears and the story is pretty strange and you need to give it time to really shine. But some people think the story is mundane and it has too much of dull conversations in it to really shine. The game also loves to skip story parts and reveal them later for a bigger impact. Congrats, you arrive at the end of the first layer of the Surreal Games Iceberg chart. The next video should be up next week. There are many layers awaiting for us and this January only started. I hope you're enjoying this video and if you do, a like would help. Please consider checking out my channel because I have many other Iceberg charts awaiting for you. From disturbing games to creepypastas to lost media, feel free to check them out. And if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing to see more stuff like this. That's all from me now and I see you in the next one. Bye.